Hey everyone, welcome back to another video and the beginning of our next build series. Now this won't be as long and comprehensive of a build series as Dawn Supra was, but the car is very cool nonetheless, and we still have some pretty interesting work to knock out on it. So, as you guys saw from the intro montage, we have some good old Detroit iron in the shop. And this is my friend Dan's 1972 Chevy Nova. So a number of years ago, my friends Bob, Sean, and I, when Bob and Sean still worked here with me, we built the turbo setup on this car. From what I recall, they are twin FIS 85mm turbos. They are T4 based, although you can see they do have tile housings at this point in time. The engine is a 400-something inch LS. It has a Turner Racing Transmissions built Turbo 400, so on and so forth. And this is a pretty true street car. Dan drives this thing around, or he has driven it around a lot in the past, as far as even driving it from his house, making multiple 7-second hits, and driving it back to his house afterwards. So let's take a moment to go through some old photos and old video footage of this thing, and we can see exactly how everything came together and what some of the history and everything else is with it.
Numbers 2 and 22. And Dan Wrench in the Edna, Ohio, the Nova. He's currently on the bump at 10:15 with an eye taking on Sean Strauss, number 11 qualifier, 694.5, 202.64 miles an hour. Dan Wrench definitely does not want to be on the number 32 spot. That means you get the number 1 qualifier come round 1 tomorrow morning. The King Engine Bearing Specialist, Warriors versus Trace Quarto. 4th qualifier. Dan Wrench lefty at center, man. He got a ton of work getting this thing back together. He doesn't spend that time. Look at the wheel steal. It did so. He sends it back down, baby. That's an outsider. That's worth the price of admission. 708 at 205 miles an hour. Give your hand of applause. Nova, baby. Dan Wrench out there. Strauss goes 698. 198. Wow, that was a nice move. And he set it down nice. Didn't panic. Set it down nice and goes all the way up to number 14.
So as you can see, this is another 6-second car. Dan's goal always was to build a 6-second street car, and after many trials and tribulations and much effort, that goal was accomplished a few years ago. There's a good story with this car the year that we took it to World Cup. It was Dan, Bob, and myself, and as Bob and I were headed out to the track, Dan had gotten there a day or two before us. We got notification from him that he had destroyed the third member. I think it was the ring and pinion that got chunked up, but one way or another, the rear end needed to be replaced. So Dan next stayed a new ring and pinion, and the ring and pinion came in wrong, which then necessitated a mad dash figuring out what we needed to have done or what needed to be done with the spool and or the ring and pinion to make everything fit, using a network or using the social network that I've developed over the course of my career to source a machine shop. Our buddy Miles came in clutch, setting up the rear end, getting all the backlash and the patterning done correctly, and we ended up making it through. I think we got knocked out in the first elimination round, but a mad dash to get to that point, and it certainly was not for lack of trying or lack of effort. But after World Cup, Dan went out, and I believe it was a 697, which you guys would have seen that already in the memory montage. But all of that being said, this thing is a bona fide beast, and I'm very happy to have it back in the shop at this point in time. So, the elephant in the room. What is the Nova here for? Well, Dan, for the longest time, had an air-to-water intercooler set up on this car, as evidenced by the backwards upper plenum on the intake manifold, throttle body facing towards the cabin. The old intercooler was mounted somewhere. Actually, it's still in there. It is between the two seats, if you guys can see it in there. It's another big shearer fab. I think it's a 4,000 horsepower air-to-water intercooler core, and it worked out awesome for this car for more of a dedicated race car or more of a race car type purpose. Well, with air-to-water intercoolers, when you are using those systems on cars like this or anything that has them, there is an added level of maintenance and complexity to those systems. Not only do you have a larger intercooler mounted in there and more tubing, but you also have a water box, and you have to make sure the water box is topped off with ice, with cold water, and that's an every round type thing where you're draining water out, packing ice into the ice tank. And for something like this, where at this point in time Dan's priorities have shifted, he wants more of a maintenance-free 7-second car. The car is more than capable of doing so, as it has many times in the past, but he just didn't want to screw around with an air-to-water intercooler any longer. And that is where this guy comes into play. So this is another shear fab air-to-air intercooler, and what we're going to be doing on this car is building new intercooler tubing. There's a few pretty interesting little items that we'll knock out in the course of doing so, but that is at least what the plan is with this car and why it is here. So the existing tubing, you can see, runs up through the fender wells there. Even this tube had to be notched a little bit to get everything up higher to clear the tires. Same on this side, you can see the tube runs that direction up, and there is a large amount of tubing on the inside of the car. Again, everything's black and kind of dark. Actually, let me grab a flashlight. But on the inside here, you can see intercooler tubes running up to the intercooler, and he just doesn't want all of this 10 pounds packed into this 5-pound bucket any longer. So the easiest thing to do was to switch over to an air-to-air intercooler. You eliminate all of the water and ice maintenance necessary with an air-to-water intercooler setup, and it'll make the intercooler tubing much simpler and a much better setup for what he wants to do with the car at this point in time. So we'll have a few challenges to work through on this car, the same as any of these fabrication projects. There is no blueprint for any of this. You just kind of have to figure it out as you go, and that's exactly what we're going to do with this. So we will have tight confines for both of the compressor outlets, and I'll need to weld elbows to both of the compressor outlets to gain clearance to run the tubes on the inside of these chassis bars right here, which will completely alleviate any clearance issues with the tires when they're fully compressed up, as if the car came off of a wheelie or something along those lines. So the intercooler tubes, like I said, they'll run on the inside of these bars and come down to, if I can zoom in here, if you see down in there, the intercooler inlet. One is there. The other one is a mirror image right there. And that will take care of that portion. The cold side will be a little bit more of a challenge, as we opted for this 30-degree angled intercooler end tank here. So I'll end up having to chop this V-band flange off and run a little extension tube up and snake everything around the top of the radiator, making sure that I do have clearance to the hood, as if it doesn't clear the hood, well, then I'm not really doing my job effectively. So like I said, we have a few other odds and ends that we need to take care of as well as we are doing this. Maybe some bungs, maybe some other cool things, blow-off valves, so on and so forth. But we'll get to all of that when we get to it as this project progresses. So for right now, the first thing I need to do with this is to come up with a materials list of everything that I need, or at least everything that I can figure out right at this moment in time to knock this out. We need the flanges, we need the tubing, the elbows, clamshell clamps, so on and so forth. Just kind of a rough ballpark idea of the materials that are necessary to make all of this happen. And then I need to put pricing together, send that over to Dan, and we can move forward from there with all of this. With the materials list completed for Dan's car and a list of clamshell clamp options sent to him so he can decide exactly what he wants to do in that department, I think that is a good place to wrap up this video. So we have a pretty cool project to look forward to with Dan's Nova, and it's always cool to have repeat customers like this in cars this cool back in the shop. But with that being said, I think that will be the end of this one, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. So thank you guys, as always, for coming along on all these different adventures and all these different journeys with me. This is a bit of a departure from the normal content here. I don't work on a whole lot of American vehicles, but when I get the opportunity to, and it's something this cool, well, it's something that I have to seize. So I can't wait to get started on this, can't wait to get it knocked out and get Dan back on the track. But we'll have to wait for that. That will all be coming up very shortly in upcoming episodes. But for right now, we're done with this one. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, check out the website for manifolds, for merch, for all things good that way, including my 15th anniversary t-shirts and hoodies, still available through the end of 2024. So if you'd like a piece of BPA history for your collection, that is an excellent way to get one. And if not, well, then hopefully I offer something in the future that does speak to you and that you would like to add to your collection. But with all of that being said, that will be the end of this one, and I will see you guys in the next episode.